Me again. All right. So I'm actually going to bring up one of my close friends and one of the smartest guys I know, Scott Bounds, who also works for Microsoft, and he's gonna run a couple of demos. Like we only have 10, 15 minutes ish, so this is gonna be super quick, but it's gonna give you an example of how you should think about AI from a marketing lens, in terms of not only how you build apps, but how you partner with others, and then some of the kind of future practical uses that you can maybe apply AI to from a marketing perspective. So, Scott, you wanna join me up?
Awesome. Thanks. Thank you. Hey, Scott Bounce with Microsoft. I actually live here in New York, and my day job's data and AI. My side job is I'm the basically our CTO for media and entertainment and advertising here, based out of New York. So, want to show you a couple things, right? And I know this morning's been a lot of, hey, what's AI? There was some scary stuff, but I want to show you real stuff that's actually happening. So one customer we have is we are partnered with the NBA. So they came to us a couple years ago. They were like, hey, we want to be our own direct-to-consumer. And we actually built it and run it with them. The reason we have is not about video, it's about user experience. And basically, if you think about we're finishing up our second year. The first year we drove 1 billion views off the app, which is huge for this app from where it went from there. Because once again, it has nothing to do with the video looks like. It comes down to personalization, knowing your customer, personalizing, engaging. So based on that, we have some new stuff. And once again, Ken with the NBA is one of our great partners here, and they're gearing up for the finals next week. So I want to show you something we actually built with them that just launched like less than a month ago. So next slide. So this is the NBA app. It's all blank. It's DRM. I wanted to record a video, but it's all rights protected, and I can't even record it on my iPhone. So I just did some screenshots. So if you look at a game, this is a game last week from the playoffs. This is Minnesota playing Dallas. But typically, you would see something like this. Even in real time, you have like the box score, right? And what we have is something new feature they wanted to add in. How can I add AI? How can I add something to the consumer? Next slide. So we have this feature now called Insights. So this is AI-generated insights on the game that happens. So once again, looking at stats, feeds, and what's actually happening in the game, they will actually pull together insights, kind of like color commentary. And I'll show you some examples here. Next slide. So this is true. So I was at dinner with my wife, and I think by the time I got home and flipped on the game, it was in the third quarter. So I basically look at the insights, and this tells you right now in the third quarter. This is the summary at the end of the third quarter. You'll get insights throughout the game, but third quarter I get a general view, one from a Maverick side, one from a Timberwood side, and then as the game's going on, if you hit the next slide, you'll see different things that are happening. So once again, you'll get stats here like, oh, hey, they're hitting a career high. Here's what's happening. They're going on a streak. Think about this as from a basketball fan. So if you aren't watching a game, or maybe I had to go watch something on HGTV for a half hour, maybe then I flip back and watch the game, I can catch up on what's actually happening. And then at the end of the game, if you hit the last one, you actually get the game summary. So here's what's actually happened in the game. And it tells you, from a player perspective, from a streak perspective. This is actually new. When we first launched this with the NBA, because one thing, this has a lot of stats in it. And when you're the NBA, your stats have to be right if you have stats. So now they actually have posts. So I actually went back and looked at this game, because you have things like, the big thing in basketball is like a triple-double. So you'll see things in here like someone's assist. So maybe they had an assist that gave them a triple-double, and then later on they took it away. So we had to make sure we scrubbed the feed. But once again, this is live, and this was very quick. They came to us and said, hey, we want to do this. So they actually have some great engineers at the NBA with the team there. We worked very closely with them. And once again, when you start thinking about this, when you think about AI, there's like 3 legs you have to think about. One is, does the code work? This actually worked. 1, how does it scale? So this is where you think about capacity and latency. And 3 is, how do you run operations? So once again, it's not, building it, scaling it, and running it. So that's a great example. And this actually launched about a month ago. And very good, feedback. We're already thinking about how can we work together and expand this. But just think about this, live sports is one thing that I spend a lot of time in, but that's driving engagement. Or, this might be something very simply. Imagine if you had something like this, but you were looking at a red carpet. And what you could think about from a red carpet? Imagine insights on a red carpet that you could use with computer vision or whatever other kind of event that you're looking at. Next slide. So something else we actually did, if you hit play right here, is, and I actually recorded this as well. I didn't want to trust the internet. Go ahead and hit play. So this is actually an NBA bot. So we did this last finals, basically a week or 2 weeks before finals. We said we want to drive this bot, and this is actually based on NBA data, so stats data. So anyone could ask a question. So I asked the question yesterday, hey, who's had the most 3-pointers ever, of all time in the finals? It comes back and tells me Steph Curry. What's actually happening here, kind of like I know Shelly and some folks talked about earlier, this is actually taking a natural language thing I'm typing in. It's actually changing it to SQL, querying databases, and putting it back together. And we had to have this for simple people as well as really basketball nerds. There are some really deep stat stuff that people might ask about. So once again, this is the real response time that I had yesterday at like 2 o'clock or something. So, hey, who had the most? And I think about this, like, who scored the most points? And I could say, hey, Rick Barry scored the most points. Then I asked a question about like this year. So like, okay, so far this year, who played the most minutes in the playoffs? And it comes back with with Luka. So once again, a way to add something to your fans. And once again, how can you engage fans 24/7? How do you get fans of your brand? This is one way to do it. Something else that's very interesting the NBA has, if you've probably seen the alternative broadcast, everyone thinks of the Manning's cast and all these things. Well, the NBA this year did a Nike broadcast. So they had an alternative broadcast of a game. The commentators were sitting at Nike and they were talking about not the game as much as courtside fashion and shoes. So once again, rebranding the same event. Lots of interesting things you could do from a branding standpoint. Next set of demos I want to show, like,
can I just add one thing? So like, just to summarize, like it was interesting, right? Like I grew up, you watch a game and that's pretty much it. And now, as you know, like a lot in sports, especially, it's like, we're trying to cater to the new demographic, which is like, how do you shorten games? How do you keep fans more engaged? And hearing from the NHL, hearing from Scott, like this is a great example of like how you need to think about engagement with customers as a whole. Second, you talked a bit about the app and the agility of it. And one of the, I've talked to a lot of CMOs over the last year, and part of the struggle with actually accelerating AI is around app modernization and coding. And the reality is with AI, you can do that like this. And in the past, it's always been a bit of a struggle to actually get the resources, get in enough time. And now that's completely changed. And we can actually move fairly quickly on making modifications. And then the last thing is, it's interesting. You mentioned the word SQL database, and I'm not going to get techie here, but I mentioned it earlier. It's this weird intersection of like, you don't need to be super techie, but you need to have an understanding around the data as a marketer. And that's something that didn't exist in the past that I think has to exist in the future. And so I would just kind of, expand on what you said and just call out those 3 points. So
yeah, no, what's funny is when you talk about AI, you have a model, but what really makes AI work is your data. How to use your data with that model. That's where the secret sauce happens. So this is kind of cool too. So something else, I think a lot of you, as you think about brands, I would think about the idea of video dubbing. How do you get that global reach? If you have content, whether it's on Instagram or Twitter or a website or Facebook. I know a lot of stuff where, hey, you might be putting out highlight clips or promos where maybe it's a downstream market. Everything's in English. Like this is right here is how can I actually do dubbing of this automatically with AI? Now, once again, if you think about it, there's built-in voices. If you have voice talent, how that fits in. I think one thing from Microsoft, we take responsible AI very seriously, and there's a lot of gates to use a lot of this functionality. The way that I think about it is, first of all, can I do something technically? Yes or no? Is it legal? Yes or no? And then is it ethical and responsible? We really on that side. So for example, you'll see my voice here. I actually have to say, like before someone said Shelly cloned his voice. You can't do that with our tech. Like you would explicitly have to have the person, I, Scott Bounds, authorize you to make a digital replica of my voice. So once again, thinking about that ethical, but let me just show you this. So I had a presentation, I chunked out 30 seconds and then I said, hey, how can we actually play this? So go ahead and hit the English version. Yeah, click play there. Or the space bar there. Okay, hit the next slide because you already heard me.
I really want to today give you a really quick overview of Microsoft generative AI solutions. If you take a look at where we're at today with AI, there's been a lot of progress and a lot of.
So that's me speaking. This is just a Teams recording. I know you guys do a lot better production, but this is, if you go to the next slide, this is a Spanish version.
Realmente quiero darles hoy un breve resumen del viaje de Microsoft en soluciones de IA. Si echamos un vistazo a dónde estamos hoy con la IA, ha habido mucho progreso y mucho revuelo.
So I'm an American engineering student. My degree is in language engiering. I speak English and Python. That's about it. I had like a year of French in junior high. My mother-in-law is actually Mexican, so we called her last night. And my wife's like, hey, Scott's been practicing his Spanish over the weekend. What do you think? And we played that. And she goes, that's pretty good. If you hit the next one. Yeah, hit play.
快速的给大家概述一下微软在 AI 解决方案方面的旅程。如果你看看我们今天在 AI 方面的位置。
So imagine this now. If you had a voice, so if you had a sponsor, you know, we actually do some of this neural voice with like, if you use the Progressive app on Facebook with Flow and it's a chatbot, that's actually a neural voice. So you know, licensing of your voice talent or use these built-in languages. So now I can take training videos, I could take 30-second clips on there. So now I can take a clip that's primarily English and maybe drop that into Hindi and Spanish. And when you think about the languages here, just with the built-in, if I think about Spanish, there's about 10 different dialects. When I want English, I could have American English, UK, Australian, you know, all these different accents on top of that to really target it. And I know we've actually done some stuff with AI where we auto-created ebooks from things like that. But once again, this is opening a whole, you know, when you think about that global reach, or even inside the US market, you know, once again, if it's English only or Spanish only, how do you cross over? And how do you go beyond, you know, just captioning? So I would say right off the bat today, this is, you know, this is not what you're gonna be putting in tentpole ads running in prime time. But think about that longer tail. How do you, you know, there's also a whole angle here, not just on marketing, but accessibility. So this is really branching the accessibility that you can really take to all these different languages. So, you know, we actually did something else cool. I don't have a slide. We did something with the Pacers at the All-Star game where we actually worked with a partner. So they took the in-arena announcer and actually in real time had captioning that they were actually dropping to people's phones. So if you had people, you know, in Spanish or Filipino or whatever you want. So once again, accessibility driving that global market of fans. So this just opens up the ability to you to think about, you know, the cross section of how that fits in from accessibility or a global market.
Yeah, that was awesome. Guess how long that took to make both videos in Mandarin and Spanish? Literally a minute. Like upload, language, click yes for all the.
It was a lot longer for me to clip out 30 seconds in Premiere to ship it out to upload it.
Yeah. So you know, and we've used a lot of this, not the same, but some of this functionality even in our day-to-day. So like as an example, I have a team across the U.S., Canada, Latin America. You know, some are in Brazil, some are in Mexico, and everyone has a comfort level. And we always defer to, hey, we're going to speak English when we're presenting, as an example. We have functionality built into Teams now that just they can present in one language and it'll come out in another language, right? And we're starting to use that, which is pretty cool to see people's comfort level, their confidence, like even at the human aspect, just to see how the technology can actually change kind of how they do their day-to-day. It's pretty cool. So from a marketing perspective, amazing. From an internal kind of usage perspective, if you're, you know, working at a global level, it's even cooler to see. So I think that's it. We're out of time.
Great. Thanks.